African Dialogue, looking at different events in depth, discussing a variety of issues.
This is a very significant historical election.
This crisis is still damaging, especially Finnish and European economies very hardly, and that's an important reason to get more and more cooperation.
And what we see here is a clear violation of, one, the rights to privacy of Tiwonge and Stephen, and also we see Malawi violating its international commitments.
Well, the position of Greenpeace is that it's been a disappointing meeting for marine species in particular.
African Dialogue, a talk show where we cover anything and everything.
African Dialogue on Channel Africa, the voice of the African Renaissance. This is day 2 of a special broadcast from the Cape Town International Convention Centre in South Africa, where the African Utility Week and Clean Power Africa Conference and exhibition is taking place. You are with me, Faith Beloy, and do stay tuned as we look at the energy potential of Africa and how to implement a diverse mix of energy resources to guarantee a future that has energy security on the continent.
African Utility Week is taking place in Cape Town from the 14th to the 15th of May, and Channel Africa will be there. As the largest utility event of its kind, it has been bringing together African utilities and service providers for more than 13 years. The event is co-located with the Clean Power Africa event, which provides a unique focus on renewable energy. The events are expected to be attended by more than 5,000 power and water professionals from all over the continent. If you can't be at this year's African Utility Week and Clean Power Africa events, then join Channel Africa's African Dialogue program for live broadcasts from 1100 to 1200 Central African Time during the event, or keep up to date by listening to our current affairs programs. For more information, go to websites www.african-utility-week.com or www.clean-power-africa.com, or take a trip to channelafrica.org. Channel Africa, the voice of the African Renaissance.
Welcome back to our program, that's African Dialogue, and we are in day 2 of our special broadcast coming to you from Cape Town, South Africa at the CTICC, that's the Cape Town International Convention Centre, where African Utility Week Conference and Exhibition is taking place. Remember, we are on the frequency 9625 kilohertz on the 31 meter band to Southern Africa. We're also available online and satellite, and you can catch us on Facebook and Twitter. In the program today, we look at solutions for future energy security on the continent by speaking to experts in different fields within the energy industry. In the studio this morning, we are being joined by Dr. Nawal Al-Hosoni. She's director of Zayed Future Energy Prize. She has worked as director of sustainability at Mazador, a company dealing with developing sustainable standards and policies around carbon footprints, greenhouse gas emissions, and renewable energy supply chain. Welcome, Dr. Hosani. You are director of Zayed Future Energy Prize. What is that all about?
The aim of the prize is to recognize, award, and honor those who have took leadership position and have a measurable impact on renewable energy and sustainability. As I mentioned, it's $4 million annually divided by 5 categories. Large corporation is a recognition award. Small medium enterprise, $1.5 million.
Is this its first year in conception, or it's been running for a few years?
No, this is our 6th cycle, and the 2nd year we award the global high schools. Just to highlight that our winner for 2013, the high school from Africa, was a Tanzanian school from Kiria, from the Kilimanjaro.
And what did it take for them to become the winners? Can you tell us a little bit about their project?
Well, the thing is about the global high schools, the difference between it and the other categories is, well, in the other categories, we have to see an actual impact and results. And as I mentioned, we award that impact and that innovation. For the global high school, it's a future project. So the students and the school together put a project plan to implement a project in the school and maybe at the community that addresses one of the three sustainable energy for all principles, which is either energy efficiency, renewable energy, or energy access. And that school have this project to build a wind turbine and basically address both energy access and renewable energy. And they are working with this school, with a network of a green school with other two schools.
The powerful thing about that is that you're targeting the key market, which is the youth.
Absolutely. And it's very, very important because at this age, they are at an age where they can make the choice of, what specialty they are going to specialize in. It helps them to shape their thinking of their future. It helps them as well to understand what does it take to be in renewable energy and how and increases this awareness on renewable energy and the sustainability opportunities, because a lot of people see sustainability and renewable energy as a challenge, but very few can see the opportunities, and we wanted to engage the youth at this age for them to see that actually there is a huge potential and huge opportunities by addressing this sector.
Now, you've also worked at Mazda as director there as well, and that company deals with developing sustainability standards. Can you just go into that for us a little bit?
Well, Mazda actually is Abu Dhabi initiative for renewable energy and sustainability. And it's very unique that this is the first initiative in the world that looks at the whole value chain of renewable energy and sustainability in an integrated way. And by addressing the whole elements of the sector, from research and development all the way through commercial applications. And to do that, Masdar is divided into different business units. So we have at the core of Masdar Institute of Science and Technology, which is a research-based graduate university that is focused on renewable energy and clean technologies. We have also Masdar Clean Power, that is building utility-scale renewable energy in the UAE and abroad. Actually, very recently, just last month, Masdar inaugurated the Zayed PV plant in Mauritania, which is a 15 megawatt PV plant in Mauritania that contributes to almost 10% of Mauritania's grid capacity and powers 10,000 houses of Nouakchott. So it's a fantastic project. The other projects that we did a couple of months ago was inaugurated in Abu Dhabi, which is the largest operational concentrated solar power plant in the world at a capacity of 200 megawatt. The other element of Masdar initiative is Masdar investment and Masdar capital. As you know, there is a lot of need for investment into this sector to help it grow and get it bigger. And Masdar Capital invest in clean technologies companies and renewable companies. And the other very important element at the heart of Masdar initiative is Masdar City. Masdar City addresses the sustainable development and how the urban planning and the design and the building sector can contribute in a positive way to address our global challenges of reducing our energy demand and reducing our carbon emissions.
Now, Dr. Nawal, you speak about a concept called triple bottom line concepts. Yes. Can you just unpack that for us? What are those?
Well, the triple bottom line is basically when you are looking at any decision you make should always have the triple bottom line at the heart of it, which is basically the social elements, the economical elements, and the environmental elements. And for your decision to be based on an actual sustainable, it has to cover these three elements. You cannot have a sustainable company if all what you look at is your revenue and your commercial growth. You cannot have a sustainable country if your decision is only based on environmental consideration without looking into your commercial growth and your social needs. And you cannot grow as an organization, for example, of a large corporation operating globally if you don't understand the social and the cultural challenges that are circulating where you operate. And that's why, for example, in Masdar, we have developed our sustainability strategy, is where our decision-making process in anything we do, even our investment and our operation, has to address the triple bottom line. So we make sure that any decision we take does not have a negative environment impact or a negative social impact, and contributes positively to the economic growth of our nation.
That's Dr. Nawal Al-Husseini. She's Director of Zayed Future Energy Prize. Thank you for being with us on African Dialogue today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay, next we are going to be talking to a guest from Symbion Power. But just as we get her lined up, let's listen to our Utility Week promo.
African Utility Week is taking place in Cape Town from the 14th to the 15th of May, and Channel Africa will be there. As the largest utility event of its kind, it has been bringing together African utilities and service providers for more than 13 years. The event is co-located with the Clean Power Africa event, which provides a unique focus on renewable energy. The events are expected to be attended by more than 5,000 power and water professionals from all over the continent. If you can't be at this year's African Utility Week and Clean Power Africa events, then join Channel Africa's African Dialogue program for live broadcasts from 1100 to 1200 Central African Time during the event, or keep up to date by listening to our current affairs programs. For more information, go to websites www.african-utility-week.com or www.clean-power-africa.com, or take a trip to channelafrica.org. Channel Africa, the voice of the African Renaissance.
And you are back with African Dialogue, and we're coming to you from the African Utility Week that's taking place in Cape Town at the Cape Town International Convention Center. And we have joining us Zelda Waite, who is Chief Operations Officer at Symbion Power. Welcome to African Dialogue, Zelda. Zelda, first and foremost, can you explain to us what Symbion is all about?
So Symbion started out in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we were working on projects there for the Department of Defense, and specifically focusing on developing the power infrastructure. And we also focus on training. And so Symbion came about focusing on the word symbiosis, and that's where the name comes from. So it's all about power infrastructure in challenging parts of the world.
Now, you are an EPC contracting company. What does EPC stand for?
Okay. We look after engineering, procurement, and construction, and we also own and operate power plants. And we have a primary focus on Africa, but we also explore opportunities globally in developing power infrastructure.
And how long have you invested in Africa for?
We've been active now for the past 4 years, but our management has previously been involved in power projects in Africa, prior to working in Iraq and Afghanistan.
So as we stand, we know there is a shortfall of electrical generation capacity due to exactly that problem, the lack of investment, which has delayed growth of the market on the continent. Why has this been the case in your research and your experience? And what kind of electrical solution have you implemented or seen work best for Africa as a unique continent as opposed to Europe and America?
A lot of the challenges you see in Africa is focused on training challenges, and a lot of the infrastructure is reliant on investment from the outside. And for a long time, people thought that Africa was a high-risk investment area. But I think finally people are seeing that the future is in Africa, future business opportunities are in Africa. And so this has become an interesting market for international players to look at developing power projects, for investors to get involved in power projects, seeing that there is huge potential for investment on the continent. Now, a lot of areas still rely very much on access to gas or fuel for IPPs or for generation. So there's still for a long time going to be a focus on that. And with some of the power plants we own and operate, for example, in Tanzania, we rely very much on access to gas and fuel at this point. But in addition to that, we also play in the renewables or green energy, and recently we've started developing projects, biomass projects, looking at using things like bamboo or cashew nut shells for generating power, especially in off-grid areas where people do not have access to the electricity grid, or where you have villages relying entirely on power generation through generators or the likes.
That's exactly my next question. I wanted to understand the linkage or all this investment. What is the ripple down effect to the ordinary people, the people in the rural areas, or that space where you do decide to build a plant?
Some of our favorite projects are specifically that, looking at distribution and rural development, because you can see the immediate direct impact in villages with people suddenly having electricity, children being able to do their homework with the light at night, small industries are developed in those villages. And so a lot of the distribution is still very important, but it means you have to be close to the grid. Now, with renewable energy and with other options in terms of green energy, you can actually provide a solution to a village or an area relying on local agricultural industries with byproducts, be it from sugarcane or, like I said, be it cashew nuts. And the impact of that is just undescribable, because suddenly you have industry going where people were previously only producing products, they can now store it and keep it cool. So it has an immediate positive effect on the entire community.
That was Zelda Waits, who is Chief Operations Officer at Zimbabwean Power. Thank you so much for joining us on African Dialogue today.
Thank you very much.
And yes, you are listening to African Dialogue, coming to you from Channel Africa, the voice of the African Renaissance. And we've been covering the African Utility Week yesterday and today. And now earlier on, my producer, Sidney Perry, took a visit down to the Vodacom stand, where he discovered a different aspect to energy saving. He had a small chat with a gentleman by the name of Alex Yeboah.
What I do for Vodacom is bringing partners together to enable us deliver the end-to-end solution of machine-to-machine.
Now, when we see a machine-to-machine, what is it all about? How does it work?
Okay, so Machine to machine is basically connecting machines through our network, collecting data from these machines, telemetry data, to a central database, and then analyzing this data to derive business intelligence to allow customers to make decisions to run their business.
Let's look at this particular one. If you say machine to machine, which machine? Because one would say, well, we could use a cell phone as a machine. What type of machines are we talking about here?
Okay, so any machine really that we can convert to for the machine to become a smart machine. By making it smart, it means you can communicate to the machine and you can receive information from the machine. So a good example would be an excavator in a mining field. It's a machine. We can plug in, give it communication for it to send information about oil pressure, tire pressure, the driver behavior to a central point, which can then information can then be used to improve efficiency.
Right, and now you talked about machine to machine. Here we see global data services. Now, the semi-state model, can you just tell us what it is all about?
Okay, so Global Data Services Platform is a product that Vodafone and Vodacom has developed. This allows you, it has got certain features, it allows you to monitor a global SIM. First of all, it's a global SIM, so it's a SIM without country, without boundary. So if you have the SIM in South Africa, it's going to work. If you have it in Kenya, it's going to work. If you have it in China, it's going to work. In Brazil, it's going to work. Allows you to be able to move the SIM from an inactive state to a test state to a live and active state. And it allows you, the customer, to be able to switch on or off the SIM card in terms of suspension or in terms of terminate.
Let's come here. You say cooler and monitoring control. What is it all about?
Okay, so with the cooler, this is just an example of application that we are using. We're basically monitoring the temperatures of the fridge, the on or off status of our compressor on the fridge to determine if the fridge is working very well. We also monitor the door opening of the fridge or the door closing of the fridge, or if an item is taken from the fridge, we also monitor.
Now, let's talk about this in terms of a customer, your consumers. How is this going to benefit your consumer?
Okay, so in terms of let's look at it from a B2B point of view. So from a business point of view, in a marketing space, you might be, a typical company will be Coca-Cola. You might want to do a special project which involves the running of this fridge and monitoring how many times the fridge is open and how many times people pick up Coca-Cola, as an example. So you are using this as a marketing exercise to drive a point.
Right. From here, where do you take us to?
We can go to mHealth to have a look at medical health facilities. So over here is medical health facilities setup. Now this solution is applicable in several areas. Now what we do here is that we allowed a trained person to go out into the field and is able to measure the vital signs of a patient. The information is collected on a tablet, and this health vital signs are now sent across to the doctor. Because the medical field has got limited resources, the doctor cannot be at the village or at the old age home or a rural area. So we use this as a way of bridging the gap between the doctor, and instead of the doctor being at the actual site, the doctor can be in a remote area and will have access to all the vital information.
Where else do you take us on this tour?
We can go and have a look at the energy monitoring platform. It's called the Giza solution. And on the Giza solution, basically, we are putting a controller linked to our network via GSM to give you access to your Giza. Now, we all know that Giza is a high energy consuming device in the household. By monitoring the usage of energy on these geysers, you are now able to collect sufficient information to guide you in terms of shaping your own behavior, save energy. So while you are saving energy, which is very good for you in terms of the amount of money you spend on electricity, at the same time, you can start taking initiative like the green project and to become energy efficient. You turn off your geyser when you are not using it. You can also set the controls to tell you when you need hot waters and when you don't need hot water, and so on and so forth. So it's basically, the more you know about your geyser, the more you are able to shape your own life around it for you to become efficient.
That was Alex Yeboah speaking to Sydney Perry earlier on. Now we do have in studio with us a representative also from Vodacom. That's Mr. Tony Smallwood. He is managing exec at Vodacom. Welcome to African Dialogue, Tony. Tony, now we're at a conference aimed at utility companies. Can you tell us a little bit about the grid? Can you unpack that, break that down for us?
The grid is where the energy is generated and the consumption is drawn from.
Okay, Tony, can you give us an example, right? Let's say you had to explain how machine-to-machine would be very useful to maybe a mining firm. Can you just talk us through that? How would it work? Where would it fit in?
So again, machine-to-machine allows a company to manage their assets, to monitor them, to make sure that they are producing what they need to do. So often in a mining scenario is that the machinery is expensive and the entity that owns that machine wants to gain the maximum productivity out of that machine. In the context of utilities, a mining entity consumes huge amounts of power. They want to make sure that that power is consumed as efficiently as possible, and that's where smart metering comes into play, and an ICT telecoms company such as Vodacom that allows us to provide solutions to that entity to manage that data better and to make business decisions around it.
We're also seeing how hydro reliance is being phased out, and there's all sorts of other options coming up. Also, in a way, this is a very key kind of move, as in we don't really have much of a choice, seeing how water is becoming a very scarce resource. Can you tell us how machine-to-machine would be able to add value to this new trend or the shift from one mechanism into these new other ones?
Again, as you've said, water is a scarce resource, and we need to focus our efforts in preserving that scarce resource. So again, through smart metering, telecommunications, and infrastructure that we can provide and solutions that we can provide allows for us to ensure that there's no wastage. I'll give you an example. Typically in a normal consumer billing relationship, if you've got a leak on your property, you're only going to pick up that leak 3 months after it's happened, when you get a bill shock where you find that your consumption is now 10 times what it should have been. With machine-to-machine, you're getting information instantaneously back to the management platforms, and it allows the consumer to monitor his consumption. And if there is any anomalies in that consumption, to address them there and there. And that's going to eliminate a lot of the wastage of the scarce resource in our lives.
The obvious solution is obviously to reduce on the consumption side, not just on a bigger platform, but within households themselves. What do you foresee if we're already experiencing in South Africa load shedding, which is very new in this part of Africa. What do you foresee happening if that conscientization doesn't actually start being practiced by ordinary individuals within their households?
Well, with machine-to-machine along comes the concept of a smart city, and that's where solutions such as solar power, panels on the roofs of us as individual consumers, we can put power back into the grid. So we can, through smart metering, machine-to-machine solutions, we will start to understand what is the excess power being generated through, say, solar, and that power can be regenerated or redirected back into the grid to major power consumers who need that power. And again, it's just making these scarce resources more efficient going forward.
And then lastly, I just want to find out if you advocate something. Previously we were the dark continent, then we were the hopeless continent, and now we've been donned the rising continent. What are your views on that?
Well, again, and it's great news that the world views us as the savior for some of the economic woes around the globe. But if we are going to be that rising economic star, it's going to put pressure onto our grids, it's going to put pressure on our water supplies, and we just as Africans need to ensure that we manage those resources more efficiently. And with machine-to-machine solutions, generating the information to ensure that we manage those resources better.
And that's Mr. Tony Smallwood. He's managing exec at Vodacom. Thank you so much for joining us on African Dialogue. So we've been listening to Mr. Tony Smallwood explaining how machine-to-machine fits into African Utility Week, and we've been coming to you from Cape Town International Convention Center in South Africa. It is day 2 of our special broadcast where the Utility Week conference has been taking place. Remember, we are on the frequency 965 kilohertz shortwave on the 31-meter band to Southern Africa. Now, earlier on, Sydney Peary spoke to country president for South Africa, Eric Ledger. He begins explaining what Schneider Electric is all about. He's from Schneider Electric.
Defines itself as the global specialist of energy management. To make it simple, we don't generate energy like a utility company. We don't use the energy like manufacturer of air conditioning. We look at the electric network from 2 angles, the supply on one hand and the demand on the other hand. The supply being the generations and the power plants, the nuclear power plants, the coal power plants, and the demand, which is the consuming side, where you have all of us in our home or in our commercial building, in our factories, we are using energy. So our involvement with the supply side is to help them to reduce the loss of energy from the initial transmission to the end of the cable in your home. And there's plenty of losses. Typically you manufacture 3 or 4, you can only use 1. So it's between 60 to 75% the losses that takes place. So we are here with all our technology to help the generators to save along the transmission and the distribution lines.
Now, how have the markets been in a continent that has got a lot of challenges? What is the market like?
Schneider sounds German, but it's actually a French company. It's headquartered in Paris. For us, Africa has been, since the beginning of our company, a major strategic focus. French has a lot of history with this continent. France has been committed to the populations here in Southern Africa, but also historically more from the north of Africa. We think that we have a role to electrify this continent. We think that we can contribute to bring solutions that are competitive, inexpensive, for us to help people to access to light, energy, and then start to build life around that. It's very painful and costly to increase generation because nobody in the public wants a new nuclear power plant. Nobody wants a big transmission over its village. So we think the bigger impact that can be done is on the demand side, to reduce consumption, to be more energy efficient. If you consume 1, you have to produce 3. So maybe you should reduce the 1 so that you need to eventually produce less. And all our focus is to try to ask every home, every factory, every energy intensive application like mining to be more energy efficient. And that's the bigger part of our focus and investment here.
So interestingly, what have you done in terms of providing that service?
Take the case of the mine. In this part of the world, one of the most energy-intensive consumers of electricity are mining industry. We have all technology that can control, optimize, and sustain a mining application with hardware, softwares, and services that would help them to measure where they consume the most of their energy, and with them advise them, be their energy manager or their energy advisor, to help them to use passive or active devices that will monitor their consumptions. And you have for that a variable speed drive, you have soft starters, you have different meters, measurement to help them to really reduce on their bill. And we commit 30% energy reduction on every site, on every application that we touch. When we build a mining site, typically and systematically, we would look at the countryside and the community that lives next to this mine. And in Schneider, systematically, together with the owner of the mine and the project owners, we would contribute to electrify this village. It's part of our commitment, and we have done it, and we have done it all the time. We want to do it more. So we have simple solar photovoltaic technology with a simple battery that is capturing the energy during the daylight, that is electrifying a small LED rack with 15 LED, we call that India, and that powers energy for a full night, and it's completely inexpensive, and in that way we are bringing energy in those very remote villages. We've done that in many parts of Africa today, in China, in India, at a very large scale.
You've come here at this important conference. What is it that you're trying to achieve at the end of the day?
I want to see how sincere, how serious the utility companies that are represented here from all Africa wants to tap into energy management, energy efficiency. We know that there is challenges in the generation and lack of investments. We understand that there is today a solution to save energy, and many of the questions I have with the other CEOs that are represented in this forum is, how much are you going to contribute to save energy, to ask your consumer that are very energy intensive to contribute to the bigger pictures and themselves be a good citizen and take social responsibility for that. And that's one of the messages that Schneider is having, that you don't have to wait for another 20 years that we build too many more of this power plant and create pollution and political problems. Today we have the solution to save energy at home, in the big factories, in the big commercial buildings that are here. It's today's solution.
And that's it for today. For the past 2 days, we've been coming to you live from Cape Town International Convention Center in South Africa, where the African Utility Week was taking place. This has been a conference around energy management, its generation, transmission, distribution, consumption, and new ways of producing energy. How will Africa look in the next 50 years is the question, as the continent celebrates the first half of the century since its unity, the establishment of the Organization of African Unity, now the African Union. From all of us here in Cape Town, myself, your host, Faith Beloy, my producer, Sydney Katunga Piri, our technical producer, Luyanda Mafiana, our organizing lady, Anna Marie Roodball, and not forget our marketing lady, Mamolefe Sekhakweng. We would like to say thank you very much for all that's happened over the past 2 days, to the organizers, to African Utility Week, and to all our listeners. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.